PowerPoint? All right, well, showmanship, let's get started. So why is showmanship important? Can anyone tell me that? If you want to turn on your speaker, you can go ahead and answer that if you'd like to. Give you a hint. It's right there at the top of this slide. So right at the top of this slide, it says the first impression is important. How many of you have walked in somewhere, or do I have any older kids on here that have been in job interviews? Well, if you have, you know how important it is to have a good first impression. If you walk in and you're slouching, you're grumpy, your outfit doesn't look good, that job interview is not going to go as well. You'd really have to overcome that first impression. And as a judge, when we are judging hundreds of animals at a time, I know your fair is a little bit smaller, it's really important to make that first impression count. So eye contact is the big one. Now, I don't want you to stare me down. That's not what I mean by eye contact. I want you to look at me, look away, look at your surroundings, look at your animal, look back at me. Make sure that you're aware of everything that's going on in the show ring when this happens. Attire is the thing, outfit. What are you wearing? What do you look like? Are you presentable? Are you clean? Do you have good hygiene? Is your hair combed? That type of thing. Attitude. Cannot tell you how many times I've had kids walk in the show ring and be scowling at me. Not a good first impression. So let's make sure that we have a good attitude when we walk in the show ring. If you're nervous, that's okay. We can fix that. That's our things that are common to be in, but we don't want to be rude and we don't want to be scowling. We don't want to be angry. We want to try to be calm and be having a good time. Same thing with your animal. The first impression of your animal. If he walks in and your animal's got sawdust all down one side, or he's got poop smeared all down one side, that's not a very good first impression. I'm starting to think, okay, did you hurry into the show ring? Did you take the time? Are you really serious about getting in here into the show? So we want them clipped, cleaned, and they should be trained. You have a month. So if they're not halter broke by now, try to get them halter broke by the end of the week. And with hogs, they should be trained by now to walk around and follow you around, not you chasing them around. Is there any questions on that before I keep going? I guess if you have questions, put them in the chat box and I can try to go through and answer those. All right, eye contact. So I have a 3-second rule. When I walk in the show ring, I want to see the kids immediately looking at me, take about 3 steps, look away, look at your animal, look at the ground, look around you, make sure you are next to the fence, make sure you're not crowding the animal in front of you. So 3 seconds, it's about 3 steps. There's a 1, 2, 3, look around, check your surroundings, look back at the judge. Your intensity is a lot with your eye contact. You can have awesome eye contact, but not necessarily be intense. Or you can feel like you're being intense, but not have any eye contact with me. And that makes it not seem as intense in the show ring. So we want to make sure that we have good eye contact with some intensity, but not be scowling, remember. And you don't have to be staring me down the whole time. We want to make sure that we are looking around, checking our surroundings. And then visibility. And what I mean by visibility is I want to make sure that you know that your animal can be seen. When we are giving ourselves eye contact with the judge, it allows you in the show ring to be seen by that judge. If you've got 20 animals in a show ring and I've only got 5 kids that are staring me down, or not staring me down, that are looking at me consistently, I am more in tune with them. When I look down that line and I see those kids looking at me, I am more drawn to their animals. So we want to make sure that that eye contact, you're catching my eye so that you're not getting forgotten somewhere in the lineup. Okay, attire. So let's talk about attire. Do you guys have a 4-H? Hey, Ben, if you could turn your speaker off, that would be great. So I don't know if you guys have. Okay. My child is screaming. Give me 1 second. I want you guys to look at this. Think of a few things that you really like about these two's outfits. You can forget that he has a mask on. Hopefully we don't have to do that this year. Think of the things you like and the things you don't like. I will be right back.
I want you to sit in the biggest thing. We'll sit in the biggest thing.
My phone's not fit, so it's like, you really need to sit down.
I know. And they're out. One's screwing around one way and one's screwing the other way.
Then he left.
Very important. We need that.
Okay, who can answer that question for me? What did you like about these outfits and what do you not like about these outfits?
I don't like how the boy on the left doesn't have his shoes tied. They're just, the laces are loose, but I don't know if that matters to you much, but to me it does.
Very, very good observation. I am not a big fan of those moccasin style shoes that he is wearing. I'm all for the boots, and part of that is because I don't know how many of you guys have been stepped on by your animals, but it hurts. So having a nice hard-toed boot is the best for in the show ring. It looks more professional, looks more polished, and it's safer for you in the show ring. So very good observation on that. Anything else?
May the webs talk? Excuse me. We don't like it how the girl's belt is so colorful. We can. Sorry. They can wear belt buckles, but it's just not the colorful ones. It's too bright.
Okay. I don't mind bright blingy belts if you want them, fine. But it's not too distracting, I think, which is important to know. If you like to be more yellow in your tone colors, by all means, do that. I don't want you to wear like a hot pink belt.
Put it back up here.
It's not about you, it's about your animal. So we're trying to blend in as best we can.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Perfect. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, awesome.
I like how the girl's smiling and she looks like she's enjoying what she's doing.
Okay, that's a good point to bring up. And I really want to stress that if you are having fun, by all means, smile. If you're not having fun, I mean, you don't have to fake a smile. I don't like you to come in with that Barbie doll pasted on smile. That's not natural to me. We're trying to blend in as much as we can. If I come up and talk to you and you're having a great time and you're laughing with me and smiling with me, fine, by all means, but please don't come in with a fake smile on your face. Okay, so I want to say absolutely no hats. Can't tell you how many kids come in with a hat ring around their head. They've just ripped off their baseball cap, they've just ripped off their cowboy hat, and they've got that nice imprint around. Let's make sure that we have our hair done and no hat lines. And I can't tell you how many times I get kids in there with chewing gum. We don't want chewing gum in the show ring. That's for out of the show ring, not in the show ring. And then the moccasin shoes are like this young man is wearing that we have already discussed. I am a huge no-no for me. I don't like the moccasin shoes in the show ring. I'm all for the boots. So your attitude, the biggest thing with your attitude is if you come into the show ring and you're confident, that's really going to show to me. If you come in and you're scared and you're timid, I can usually tell that, and your animal can tell that. If you're scared, if you're nervous, your animal's going to pick up on it. So the best thing we can do is to be confident and to take deep breaths. And being confident, a lot of it, I like to ask questions. If I ask you a question and you answer confidently, that's a lot more meaningful to me than if I ask you a question and you reply with another question. So if I were to say, how much did your animal weigh? And you were to reply, I think it was 120 pounds. That's not confident. If you were to just flat out say he was 120 pounds, then I would believe you, because for all I know, that's what he weighed. So be confident in your answers, even if I'm asking you basic questions. Try not to sound like you don't know. Try to think of another example we can do. I'm pretty basic with questions. I like to know the basic things, your typical breeds, market breeds, your typical cuts of meat, how much your animal weighed, what you've been feeding them. These are all very, very basic questions and things you should be learning if you're showing market animals. So have that in mind. The pictures that I'm going to show here in the next few slides are going to show the difference between being serious and having a scowl on your face. There's not really anybody scowling. We want to be intense. We don't want to be fake, but we don't want to be, shooting death glares at the judge. Like I said, no fake smiling. If you're having a great time, by all means smile, but you don't need to paste a fake smile on your face. Everyone gets nervous. Even me as a judge, I get nervous in the show ring and I get excited. And sometimes I can't remember what I'm trying to say because I get so excited when I'm in the show ring. So the best thing you can do is take a couple deep breaths. Know that I'm not scary. I'm not going to bite. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to try to help you as best I can. So just take a couple deep breaths to help you and your animal relax. Okay. So when we are showing, even if it's just your quality versus your fitting classes, your animal is your partner. This is not a I'm in control and this is my subordinate or my servant. We are partners. If your animal's having a bad day, nothing you do is going to make that show go better for you. The best thing you can do is from now is to make sure that your animal trusts you. All our animals are very trusting. If we are mean to them when we're practicing, when they get in that show ring and they're scared, they're not going to want to be in there with you. So we want to make sure that we are being very, very trusting to our animals. Make sure that they learn to like you. Big things to do that. That's going out and just sitting with them. If you have a book you like to read, go out and sit in the pen. Let them come up and get used to you. Let them sniff you. Let them smell you. Let them come up and get used to you just sitting there. That's the biggest thing. We want them to know that they can trust you. Making sure that we are never mean to them, that we are never hitting them, that we are never angry with them is going to be your biggest friend when you get into the show ring, because those animals are going to trust you and only you. So remember, he's your partner. Your animal is your partner, not just your servant, not just the one that you're trying to drag around. We want to treat them as equals. When you come in the show ring, they need to be clipped, cleaned, show ready. Like I said, clean is a big one. Can't tell you how many times we get kids that are rushing around. They come into the show ring with poop all down one side, with sawdust all down one side. We don't want that. We want them to be nice and clean and ready to go. They should be halter broke. If they're not halter broke now, you've got a week to get them halter broke and another 3 weeks to make sure that they are ready for the show ring. They should be halter broke. They should be broke to walk around the ring. If you're showing hogs, they should be able to walk around the ring. You should not be having to chase them around or whip them hard. I don't want to see that in the show ring. I don't want to see you smacking your steers really hard. I don't want to see you punching your lambs. I don't want to see you whipping your hogs really hard. Need to stay calm, need to be gentle, need to be kind. Another big thing is the spacing is really important. I know it's hard to remember things, but when we get in there, we've got to make sure that we have enough space between the animals in front of us. So if you are first in line, great. You don't have to worry a whole lot about your spacing of the one in front of you. If you are somewhere in line behind somebody, make sure that you've got at least 3 feet in front of you. This is allowing you to have enough room to show your animal off, but it's also common courtesy. When we are getting in the show ring, we're trying to show off our animal to the best of our ability, but we're also trying to make sure that we're not ruining somebody else's animal. We're trying to be kind to everyone around us. And if our animal has 3 feet around him on each side, if he jumps, he's not going to bump somebody else. He's not going to hurt somebody else. He's not going to make anybody else's animal get out of line. For you hog kids, this is also important. If there's a lot of hogs walking towards me, try to move your hog away and walk him somewhere else so that we're not in a huge cluster of hogs coming straight to the judge. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope so. I guess you don't all have to turn your speakers on and tell me. And then I am a huge advocate for straight lines. If I tell you guys to line up, I want the line as straight as possible. I don't want an animal 5 feet in front, one backwards. If I'm saying side by side, and we'll talk about that in just a second, what side by side means, I want them to be straight. If we're in a profile, I want you guys to be in a straight line. Before I move into each individual species, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. and we can discuss that a little bit if you guys have questions. Okay, does anyone have questions? I'm trying to check the chat and I don't know it.
Okay, so if we, what happens if we do rough things with your animals? Will you get like disqualified?
In the show ring?
Yeah.
Well, I'd prefer you don't. I will give you warnings. If you're getting too rough and too violent in the show ring, you will get warned by me and possibly dismissed. That's very rare. Sometimes an
Okay.
animal, especially steers, sometimes a steer needs a good whack over the nose to keep them in line. But if you've worked your animal enough, you shouldn't have to get very violent with them in the show ring. They should
Okay.
be pretty
Okay.
good to go. Does that make sense?
Yep. And also one more question. This year, will you be judging off of weight or will you be judging off of muscle for the
Both.
pigs?
Both.
Okay.
Every animal's weight is important. but
And
that's
every
not-
muscle is important.
Muscle's important. Muscle weighs more than fat. So if
Okay.
you have a big, heavy muscled animal, he's gonna weigh more than a big fat animal. But we want to try to find the quality balance between the two of fat and muscle.
Okay.
So I guess the biggest thing I want you guys to think of as you're getting your animals ready, what do you like to eat? Do you like to eat the fat or do you like to eat the muscle? And do you like
The
to eat a lean animal versus one that has enough fat cover to it? If you
I like the fat. I would like the muscle.
gonna say most of us like the muscle. The only exception is, what is your bacon mostly made of?
Fat. Muscle.
Fat. There's a little bit of muscle, but there's quite a bit of fat. That's what makes it crispy. We're frying it in its own fat. So, but we don't want it to be all fat. We like to have enough muscle to it. So there's a proper balance. The ideal market weight for steers right now, and every steer is different. You're going to have a more moderately framed steer that could weigh in and be completely finished out at 1,200 pounds, or you could have a bigger frame steer that's going to weigh in and finish out at 1,500 to 1,600 pounds. That's pretty big. We don't want them quite that big. So we want to make sure that our hogs are weighing between 260 pounds and 285 pounds. That's your ideal market weight. Your ideal market weight for sheep is going to be 130 to 148. I try to get my market lambs to 138 to 142 pounds. It's like my sweet spot. 138, 142. If they're much smaller, they're not going to be big enough. If they're bigger than 150, they're going to be too fat and getting too old. So we want to get them right in between that 135, 145.
All right. Okay.
And your goats, the bigger you can get your goat, the better. For those of you that are showing them, we don't want goats over 100 pounds. I've never seen a goat that's more than 100 pounds that isn't fat, a show goat, but we want them over 60 pounds. Our show goats right now, we're trying to get them to about 80 to 90 pounds. If they're pretty little, I mean, if we can get them over 60 pounds, that's fantastic. We're getting there. They need to be at least 60 pounds. Any questions? Anybody else have questions?
Excuse me?
Yes.
If there is someone in front of you and behind you that's kind of squishing you in between them, what do you do?
Try to give you, so if you have enough space in front of you, that allows you to move forward a little bit to help give you yourself some space. And if they keep crowding you, you can nicely ask them to back off. Usually as a judge, if I see a lot of crowding, I'm going to yell at you guys to back off and give yourself some space. It allows me as a judge to see everybody better. And like I've said, it's common courtesy to give the other exhibitors space.
I have a question.
Yes.
If you think your steer or animal is going to be overweight, how would you limit them from getting too much, but still feed them the amount of feed that they need?
Are you concerned? Which species are you talking about?
Overall, just generally, if you think your goat or Like I'm raising a steer and I don't want him to get over the weight that you said.
Okay, I
So-
wouldn't worry about your steer at all, because I can guarantee that most steers that even come through my show ring are not going to be completely finished out. They're going to be close. They're going to be show ring finished out, but they're not going to be feedlot finished out. So whatever fat you can get onto those steers is what we want. I'm not going to be too concerned. If your steer's a big steer, he's going to need more fat on him. If he's a really short steer, he's not going to finish out at 1,500 pounds. If he's really tall, he is going to finish out at more 1,500, 1,600 pounds. So every animal's different. You can't take a tiny little itty bitty steer and make him 1,600 pounds without making him too fat. Same with the sheep. You can't take a tiny little framed sheep and make him 180 pounds without putting too much fat on. So every animal, there's a balance. Does this make sense to everybody? I hope I'm not going too far over everyone's heads. Did that answer your question, David?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
Yes. Does your pig have to, if they're overweight, do you have to get another pig?
At your fair, I'm not sure. We
Uh,
don't want our pigs to be over 290 pounds. If they're under
over
290,
190?
290 is too big.
Okay. Okay. Thank
You
you.
guys show pigs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want them over 290 pounds.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. How much should you exercise a show goat and for how long?
Ooh, okay. So we can get into this, and this can be really fun. Show goats and lambs are, the more you can work them, this is how we always would work them. We'd do 1 day of really heavy running and working them hard, taking them for a long walk, sprinting them, and then they would get a break. The next day, we would work for 20 minutes to an hour on just showmanship, just bracing, setting legs, walking in circles nice and slow, show ring slow. We don't want to be trotting through the show ring. We want to be going nice and slow. So whatever you can put into your goat, we don't want to run them too much, but we want them to build up that big bulky muscle, and that comes from sprinting, not walking. So with goats and sheep, it's really important to do like an every other day heavy regimen sprinting, or even if you have your animals in small pens, if you can let them out to run every night and just play and be themselves, they will work themselves. They will run, they will jump, they will play, and they will build that muscle up without you having to do a whole lot of work. So it's really important to remember that these animals that we're showing are still little kids. How many of you guys have little siblings? I want you to think about that. I've got a 3-year-old at home. If I were to keep him in a little pen, say a 10 by 10 foot pen all day, and then take him out and put him in a big grassy field and say, nope, now you have to do exactly what I say. You can't run, you can't play. He's not gonna like it. Our animals that we are showing are still babies. We want to make sure that they have time to play and run and exercise on their own so that they can get that. They're gonna be better for you if you let them have some time to play.
Our pigs, they run around and play when we like walk up and we kick something like a little rock, and they go like and they like run around and play.
That's good. That's good. We want that to happen.
Thank you for answering my question, ma'am.
You are welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
So if they run around too much and they're really skinny and not fat, will you have to switch, just like I said, if they're fat enough? If they're like under 299 or 100, will you have to switch or just feed them?
You just have to keep feeding them. There's a balance. We don't want to work our animals too hard that it burns all the fat off. This is why I think it's important to have a work regimen where you're not working them hard every single night. With hogs, we really don't run them. You just let them play. Let them play, then you walk them around. And we don't want to walk them for miles on end. We want to make sure that they walk nice and easy and nice and slow for you. If they run and play for a little bit, great. Then take them nice and easy. Same with your sheep, goats, and steers. We try not to run steers because they can injure themselves. Cattle don't naturally run. If they're running from something, they're in trouble. So we try to just walk cattle and keep them calm.
Okay.
All right, we're going to keep going on so that we can get through the different species. If you have questions, write them down, keep track of them, and we'll have time to discuss more in detail after we get through everything. Oh, come on. All right, so we've talked about this. So we're going to get into beef. I hope we have beef kids on here. If you can look at how these two kids are showing, you can see that when their animals are on profile like this is what we'd call profile, or head to tail. Pretend that they are in the same show ring. This would be head to tail because we've got nose, tail, nose, tail. So head to tail in a line. Or profile. This is what most judges are going to say if you come in. Let's slide them up. Profile. This is what I mean. And when cattle are on profile, you can see how these steers, we pop that back leg forward. The one that is against the rail or the non-show side is the one that's going to be popped forward. You can also see how these kids are holding them. Two different styles, but they're stepping away from their steer enough that you can get a good full view of the front of their steers. You can see how that brisket is. This is actually a heifer on your right. But you can see that she's holding that calf away from her, giving that calf the full attention. They're making sure that we can see that calf completely, that they're not blocking any of the views. And with these show sticks, when you're standing, you don't just have to scratch their sides. A lot of calves really like their brisket to be scratched, which is right down here in the front. Where this young lady on the right is, you can see that she's scratching that heifer's brisket and she's keeping that head up. And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we keep those calves calm in the show ring. And then if you're working them now, start working them with your show stick, because if you haven't touched them with a show stick, a lot of steers will jump. They're not used to it. They'll get scared. So we want to make sure that they're used to your show stick and used to having their feet touched with your show stick. Here's a side-by-side front view. If the judge is in front, here's two different views. This one on the left would be if you were the judge, this is how you should stand to show me how your animal looks. She's very intense in her look, but you can tell that she's not scowling at the judge. She's very intense, making sure that I pay attention to her. Again, a lot of these people, you can see both of these young ladies have the soft shoes on. I'm going to say don't do that. Please don't. I've seen kids with broken toes from wearing those in the show ring. So please put some good, strong boots on and not these soft-soled shoes. But again, like I was talking, she's scratching this steer's brisket. This is allowing her to stand to the side. It's allowing her to keep that steer's head up. And he looks very well presentable. She's completely out of the way of that steer so that I can see that front end of him perfectly. And then this lady on the right here, you can see with her that she's standing far enough to the side that she's not blocking that side view. The judge is right there in front of her. He can see that steer completely, all angles of him, and she's not in the way, and yet she still has perfect control of that calf. When we are showing, you are always going to have your left arm is always going to be palm up, pushing that steer's head up. When we're walking, that needs to be palm down, and you'll be pulling their heads. Palm down, you've got more control pulling. If you're standing there like this with them, then it's going to be palm up. You can push their heads up better with a palm up view like that. Here's another side-by-side continued. You can see this young lady on the left could probably step another couple inches to the side. See, if she's too close to her steer, I can't see that full angle of that calf. Where this young lady on the right maybe is a little too far from her calf. You don't necessarily have to, stiff arm him away, but she's giving me a better view of this calf because she's standing farther away from her animal. So let's also talk, when we are walking our cattle through the show ring, your show stick, we should have those sticks held straight up and down next to you. I don't want to see them horizontal. I don't want to see those pokey ends in the air. They should be nice, straight up and down when you're walking. And we want to make sure that when we are doing this, that our calves will behave for us. The only time that show stick should come in front of that calf's nose is if he's misbehaving. If you've worked your calf enough, you can use that show stick as your tool and just lightly swing it in front of that calf's nose. He's going to be like, oh, I know not to go any farther. I know to calm down because that show stick's in front of my nose. So there's just little things we can do. We're going to watch a video here in just a second on the importance of working your calves and some pointers and tips on showing them. But I hope you can see this front view is really important. I get a lot of kids that don't necessarily know how to do that when I'm standing in front of your calf to show him off. And we really want to make sure that we do that. And same with this profile. We really want to make sure that we have this back leg popped. This is the show side that you can see. That back leg that the judge typically isn't overhandling is going to be the leg that is popped forward. Every calf is different. Some need them popped forward a lot farther. Some only need a few inches. That's up to you when you're working them to learn how to get your calf perfect. Okay, just some little things as we're reiterating this. When we are showing beef cattle, they should have a leather halter with a chain. If you are showing a black calf, you should have a black leather halter. If you're showing a Hereford or a red Angus, you should have a red leather or a brown leather. If you have a smoky colored steer that has black skin pigment, should have a black halter on. We want to try to match those calves to make them not stand out. We're not trying to draw attention to us, to our show sticks. We're trying to blend in with our animals. The ultimate key to showmanship is being the most invisible. If you have your animals so well trained that you barely have to touch that animal, that you can walk him into the show ring and he sets up for you and you don't have to fight with him and fidget with him, that's what I'm going for. So same with beef. We want to try to blend in. We don't want to have a pink show halter on a black steer or a hot pink show stick. I mean, if you want to do that, fine. My personal preference is we don't want to try to draw attention to things that we aren't necessarily good. If you have a lime green show stick and you are scratching that steer, I will always see when you are trying to set feet or trying to scratch him because it's eye-catching. We don't want to be eye-catching in that way. The best thing to do is just have your animal so well trained you hardly have to touch them. Again, hands should be with steers. It's really common for people not to hold them close enough. I know they've got a chain on them, but your hand should be no farther away than 6 inches from the head. I prefer to have them really close to the head. That gives you more control. So make sure your hand's close to their head and even on the chain. And then our leads for when we're showing them, we tend to get these really long leather leads on our show halters. They don't need to be that long. We don't ever tie them up with the show halter. If you have a really ridiculously long lead, it makes it complicated in the show ring to wrap it up, to try to get it out of the way. I prefer to only have my show lead, the leather part of my show lead, to only be 2 feet, if 3 feet tops, because then when I'm walking, I don't have to try to wrap that or roll that up so I'm not stepping on it. Our combs, when the judge comes and combs, make sure that the judge will step away and look at the back of that calf. Don't start combing that animal till the judge starts walking away to the next animal. Make sure I see you comb, but don't block my view with combing. I hope that makes sense. And then your show stick, like I was saying, straight up and down when walking, and make sure the point is down. I am going to share a link in the comments if you guys know where the chat box is, and pull this video up and try to watch it, because I don't think I can get my internet to share it with you guys. So I will share the link in the chat box. If you're having problems, let me know and I'll see if I can get my computer to play the video for you. But we're going to watch a quick video on beef showmanship. Do you have any questions while I'm getting this set up?
We do. What do you mean exactly by combing?
So with a steer, we will have a comb on them. So I hope you've used a comb before. What is your show attire when you are showing steers? Your leather halter, your show stick, and you should have a comb with you. I can't think of how to demonstrate that. I don't have one on me. So if the judge comes up and handles your animal, you just want to make sure that you comb that hair back into place. If your steer doesn't have a lot of hair on him, typically the judge isn't going to mess that hair up. If your steer does have more hair on him and is longer, when the judge comes up and feels them, I'm going to flatten that. So we want to make sure that we comb it back into place. It's just kind of to make sure your animal looks presentable at all times. Same thing with hogs. That's why we have a brush or a rag. If the hog poops or lays down in the dirt, we take that brush, we rub it off, make sure they look clean. And sheep tend to not get sawdust all over them in the show ring. That's why we just tend to use our hands, because they typically don't lay down. They typically don't root in the dirt. And the judge doesn't mess up their wool because there's hardly any on them. Same with goats. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna share this video link in the chat box. So it's on YouTube. Hopefully you guys all have a good link to that. Let me know if you're having questions.
Natalie, there's a question in the chat. The question
Oh, which way
is,
do we brush steers? I just
Yes.
saw that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we always want to, even when we're washing steers, if you're really big into showing steers, you know that we always brush the hair forward, from shoulder forward and from hip forward. So we want to make sure that when we are brushing them with the comb, same thing, that we are brushing shoulder forward. So the judge is going to come up, he's going to fill down that top line from the shoulder back. We're going to fill down the ribs kind of in a sweeping motion like this, and you're going to take your comb and brush the hair up and forwards like this, up your steer towards the head.
Where's the chat at? We don't really do Zoom on the phone.
Ooh, yes. So the chat's going to be down on the bottom.
Like where? Sure. No.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can get this to share for you.
Okay.
Let me see if I can do this.
My shoulder blade, not that one. JJ, scratch it.
Robbie, we will make sure that we will send the link by email to all of the livestock exhibitors. So we will send the judges' notes that are in the chat by email so that you guys can see it then. All right.
Okay.
I think we can share this one. It's fairly short, so I will share this.
Oh, you can.
We'll see if it works for you or not. I don't have really great internet, so it may be slow.
The volume's pretty low, Natalie. Can you turn that up?
That is as high as I can get it.
Brandy, should we try sharing my screen? I think it's coming in mine a lot clearer and I can hear it. Should we try that?
Ma'am? I can't hear anything.
I can't turn up the volume anymore.
Well, all I hear is like screeching.
Grace, we'll make sure that the link is sent to your mom's email so that you can watch it again later, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so if you could watch that, I hope that you got something from it. Like Brandy's been saying, we will make sure that you get that link. Please watch that at home. There's a lot of information in there in just that short 4 minutes. You've got your sound on, please turn it off. Or is that me that's doing that? That might be mine. Oh, that's me. Huh. Okay. My bad, that was me. Okay. Like I said, if you can watch that video later, please do. There's a lot of information in there. Really important, they're talking about with the show sticks, making sure that they're straight up and down. She was only using that show stick to kind of put in front of that steer's nose to make sure that calf wasn't running away. And again, when she was setting that calf up, I hope that you could just see this, even if you couldn't hear what he was saying, she hardly had to touch that calf to get that calf in line. She was taking a couple steps backward and that calf was walking into the setup position on its own. This all comes with practice. This comes with lots and lots of practice and making sure you have somebody to help you know where he needs to be set up at. Again, if you couldn't watch that video tonight, hopefully you can watch it again later in the next couple days so that you can understand which way to do that. We're going to keep moving forward, so we have time to answer lots of questions. Okay. All right, so again, like I've said, here's your, to reiterate this, leather chain, leather halter with chain. When you're leading, you should have your right hand palm down, leading that calf, pulling him. When you're standing squared up, it should be left hand, palm up, so you can push his head up. Hand should be no farther away than 6 inches from the head. When you have your comb, make sure that you brush not right after the judge touches, but as the judge is starting to walk to the next steer. And make sure that when you do have that comb, try to put the teeth of that comb towards you. So if it's in your back pocket, make sure that those teeth of the comb are towards your back so that you're not poking anybody, and that tends to not let your comb fall out of your pocket because it doesn't snag on stuff. And then show stick, as you could see in that video, that young lady only used her show stick to kind of go in front of that calf's nose if he was starting to act up. But other than that, it was always straight up and down. So let's make sure that we do that with our beef. We are going to move on now to sheep and goats. I hope you guys have seen people brace like this. This is what we call bracing. And these animals are pushing hard against these kids. This is allowing the top muscles down here, their rack and loin and that leg. You can see that muscle definition. This is because that lamb is bracing against this girl's legs. Same with this goat. You can see that he's got a nice strong top line, a nice big old leg on him, and he's pushing against this young lady's legs. This is what we call bracing, and all goats and sheep should be shown braced unless you have breeding animals. That's about the only time where we don't have breeding animals. These market animals need to be shown this way. A big key to bracing is to make sure the windpipe on our sheep and goats goes straight up the front of that chest. It's a lot like humans. You can see it on your animal. If you're standing there in front of them, that windpipe's right on the front end of that animal. So if we're bracing and we're shoving our knee into that windpipe, they're not going to want to push against you because they're suffocating. We want to make sure that when we're bracing, we've got the animals in between our legs so that one side of the chest or the shoulder is on the inside of your leg on each side. It's kind of hard to demonstrate as we are not in person, but you can get a good visual with these kids of how they're bracing. She's not cutting off the windpipe of that lamb, and same with this goat. That goat is in between the two legs so that she's not pushing too much pressure right on that windpipe. Again, it's important to see that these necks of these animals are at a 90-degree angle. This young lady's neck's a little too far back, actually. It needs to come forward just a little bit. But keeping that neck straight up and down tightens that top line up and makes that animal look a lot better. This is my favorite demonstration here. Sheep and goats, so pretend like you've got a goat here as well. There's a big T that goes across your goat and your sheep. If I am in on the top part of this T and I'm towards the head, the judge, as a judge, you should be stepping to the side. If I am behind this T and towards the back, you should be bracing. The same, you can see this visual here on the side. If the judge walks in front of this shoulder, you should step away and let them see that front end of the animal. Most commonly, this is going to be when I tell you to do side by side and the judge fills all the animals, then they're going to walk around in front. This is when that judge gets past this shoulder towards the front, you step to the side. And we want to make sure that we keep our goats and our sheep between you and the judge. The only time that you don't do that is when you're doing a quick turn around the front of the nose. Is going to be the only time that you don't keep the animal in between. You're just going to try to get to the other side smoothly. Don't try to jump from side to side, nice and slow from one side to the other. So this is a really good visual for you guys. Remember, here's the T down the animal. If the judge is in front of the lamb towards the head, or in front of the head, you should be stepping to the side. If the judge is behind the shoulder, behind this big capital T, you should be bracing. If the judge is on the left side of this sheep, or you should be on the right, that type of thing. I hope that makes sense to you. Here's a really good visual of another goat being braced. You can see the nice straight neck, nice straight back. You can see that they're bracing well. You can see that these kids are paying good attention. This lamb's top line's nice and braced. You can see how that muscle in his back leg, you can see how that's really defined because he's bracing really well. Like I said, sheep and goats are shown braced. It's national. If you're not bracing your animals, this is something we need to work on as a judge. This is what I'm looking for. If you can get a true proper brace on your animal, you're going to have a really good time in showmanship. Here's kind of a good visual of someone that's trying to brace, the girl on the right, and someone that is bracing, the girl on the left. You can see that she's got the proper stance. I don't think her wether there is bracing quite properly. You can see that his back is breaking a little bit. But we want to make sure that we are in front of our animals and not standing to the side like this young lady on the right. This isn't proper bracing stance. That animal's not even able to push against her. She's just kind of standing funny. That's not what we want to see. This is very formal, really nice. This, not so much. So we want to make sure that we get a proper brace. When we are walking our sheep, their necks should be straight up and down. We should have a nice 90-degree angle from their back to their head. If you haven't been walking them in hand yet, that's whenever they are in hand or on the halter, their head should be at a 90-degree angle. They shouldn't be running wild and running circles around you. We want to make sure we do that. For goats, when you're training them to walk, you can show a goat in a leather halter. It's very similar to a steer halter. It's going to have a chain on it, or a collar. And depending on your goat, some goats are going to behave a lot better with a collar on, with the chain around their neck, and some are going to behave a lot better with that leather show halter on. So you need to figure that out now as you're practicing. And when they are in hand, same with your steers, we want to make sure that they are going a nice, slow, easy show ring, steady walk. So they're walking around the ring at a nice, easy pace. We don't want the animals jogging. None of these animals look good when they're running around. It makes their bellies jiggle. They don't look good. So we want them to go nice and easy around the show ring at a nice, easy pace. Here's a really good example of how you should look from the front. Same with sheep. You should be standing to the side. If the judge, where these kids are, the judge is in front of those goats' noses. So they're standing away to the side. You can see that there's a young lady here. She's got a show halter on her goat. And everybody else has got the chains on, and there's kind of different ways, different chains you can use. But this young lady, this is a show halter for a goat. But you can see standing to the side, same with steers. We want to make sure that we step far enough to the side that I can see that full view of the goat. But it's also very important, like this slide up here, when you're standing to the side and the judge is in front, I don't want your legs any farther back than this little groove where the shoulder meets into the ribs. You shouldn't be standing clear back here in the belly, and you shouldn't be standing in front of the nose. We want your legs next to the animal, facing forwards like this sheep is. His front legs are square and he's facing forward. We want your toes to be squared facing forward. And no farther back than right here where this sheep's line is between the shoulder and the rib cage. This is a side-by-side view of these goats. You can see that some of them are bracing, some of them are not. You can see this young man second over from the left. His goat's bracing and he looks pretty good. You can see the ones that aren't. This one's bracing. So a true brace on your goat's going to be a big difference. It really accentuates goats. They're a little harder to read muscle without getting up close and personal on them. Here is what we call profile on your sheep and goats. These kids just barely got into the show ring, and these look like does, so they're not going to brace them. But you can see when they're walking, that palm is up. When you're walking your goat with a collar, your palm is up. When you're standing there with them, your palm is up. You've got more control to pull their head up when your palm up. And you can see this line is fairly straight. It's kind of a small ring, but they tried to give themselves enough space between the fence, but they're also utilizing their show ring and making sure they have space between each other, and they're not pressed up right against the fence, so the judge can get between them and the fence and see that animal completely. Same with this picture on the right. The judge, nice straight line. See how nice and easy that is? That's a really nice look. The judge can walk all the way down there. He can come back up around this other side and be able to get around the animals. They're not too crowded. They've given themselves plenty of room. So it's really important to make sure you do that. So we're going to watch another video on sheep and goats. Sheep, they're always shown braced unless the judge is in front of that shoulder. Make sure the lamb is between you and the judge. Really important when we're trying to transfer from one side to the other of these goats or sheep, when you're in the show ring, it's best to just do a nice easy step around the nose facing your animal, switch hands, switch around the front of the nose, then try to do a fancy turn. And we never ever step around behind the sheep. We never go around their rump. We always turn around the nose. If you're stepping around the rump, you're giving up all your control you have of that animal. And in something with goats, we don't ever pass the goat behind our back. It's really common to see kids do that. They have them on a chain. Instead of facing their goat and stepping to the other side, they do this, what they think is fancy, pass behind your back. And that gives the goat complete control. If that goat decides to run away, you're going to get pulled over. That goat's going to get loose. So we always want to make sure that when we are going from one side of the animal to the other, we face that animal. We don't ever want to get that animal out of sight. Hope that makes sense. No bracing when the judge is in front. When we are showing lambs and goats, they are always squared up. You can see that like this. You can see this lamb, his legs are nice straightened down. This goat's maybe a little too stretched out, but his front legs are nice and straight down to the ground. Same with these ones. Nice straight down to the ground, nice straight down to the ground. That's what we want. We want their legs where they should be, right underneath. This lamb.
Ma'am?
Yes.
They're wearing the shoes again.
Yes, it's a huge thing right now, and I'm not a big fan of that. So just know, please don't do it. You can see someone in here's got sneakers on, a lot of those soft-toed shoes. I guarantee if you try to wear those and you get stepped on, it's gonna hurt. Your boots will protect your toes. Okay. Pretty much the same. Let me see if I can get this other video to play. And again, if you can't hear what it's talking, try to watch it on your own screen. And I'll play it on this screen, and hopefully we can get this to work. And this is going to be a little bit longer. I'll play the sheep one first. Then if we have questions, you can ask, and then we'll play the goat one. Okay, sorry, just 1 second. I'm going to put this into the chat box again. And see if I can get this screen share. This one, the sound is not very good on it as it is. It kind of echoes. So if you can't hear what it's saying, you're gonna have to watch this on your own phone or at home when you have more time. I'm gonna skip it forward a little bit so we can just.
Hey, Natalie, mine's really good. Can I share mine screen?
Yeah, if you can get yours to work. Do I need to stop sharing mine?
Yeah, let me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if you can get it to work on yours, let's do yours.
Children, Clay, Grant, and Kylie. And we're gonna share with you how we practice showmanship.
I'm not seeing it on your screen.
There's our cameraman. Grant and Kylie are gonna be our show.
You're still not seeing it?
No.
On a daily basis. We're gonna share one very crucial.
Mm. Let's see. What are you seeing on my screen? Anything?
Nope, it's just black. Has your name on it.
How about now? Is that working?
Tip that we use to catch lamb.
Nope.
And
No.
Kylie and Grant are gonna go in the pen and show you what we do when we go into a blank.
Okay, we can see you now.
You'll notice there are 2 gates on each side of the pen. It is critical to open those gates, run the sheep in their corner, that way. Nothing tries to jump.
Is that working?
Jump a gate.
No.
And get hurt when we're trying to catch them. So we'll just let you watch them pen these lambs.
All right, we'll just have to have everybody watch it on their own, I guess. Sorry about that.
Well, I'll put it back up on my screen. If they can't get the audio, at least they can see what's going on. They'll have to watch it later by themselves. I'm going to pause it right there for a second and just let you know it's really important not to be lifting our lambs up by their heads. Same with the goats, where she set it with her hands. That is the proper way to set your animal. I don't want to see you picking them up by their heads. If you have to pick them up, then you need to grab underneath, grab right down here at their chest, pick them up by their chest floor, not by their heads. So where she set it up with her hands, that is how they should be. If your animal's really jumpy, you're going to need to be tying that lamb or that goat up and touching their legs so that you can set them up with your hands. So I just want to point out there that they were standing really far back on those lambs. You don't need to stand that far back. I prefer to have you more just right there in between the shoulder and the rib cage. So if you watched that video, you could see how far back she stood. Let's try not to stand clear back to the hip there. Granted, that is a little lamb, but you don't need to be that far backwards. Okay, I hope you guys are able to see that. Does anyone have questions about that? Oops, that's me. And if you guys, if you follow this channel with that video, he's got a whole nother video on how to brace lambs and tips and tricks. That family's they're really, really good at what they do. So if you have a lot of questions, follow that YouTube link and just keep watching their channel. You will learn so much on how to show sheep properly. Did any of you guys have questions on that before I move on to goats? Okay, I will get the goat link put up. I'm going to kind of skip through this video so that we're not running too short on time. And this one's a little bit longer. It's very similar to your sheep, how you're bracing all that. There's just key points in it that I want you to see. And like I said, if you're showing goats, please go back through and watch this video when you get home or when you have time to watch it on a better device. Oh, never mind. This is not the video I was thinking was really long. This video's actually really short. I couldn't find a good one on goats, so this is just going to show you some really exquisite goat showmen. It's only a couple minutes long. And just the first part of it, you're going to see how they're holding their chains, how they're bracing these animals, and how they're setting them up. Oh, what am I trying to do? Sorry, trying to remember how to do what I'm doing here. So I'll share the screen. Okay. I want you to pay attention to how nice and easy they are walking those goats, how they hold those collars. And same thing, they are setting them up with their hands first. Okay. That just gives you kind of a good idea of how they should be looking in the show ring, and what we want them to be doing there. And then same thing with sheep. When I'm in front of that shoulder, you should be stepping away to show me that front end of that goat. When I am behind the shoulder, behind the shoulder, you should be bracing. It should be bracing and getting a fairly good brace on your goats. Okay, any questions? Did anyone have questions on sheep or goats? There is one thing that I want to cover with fitting with sheep is that we don't want to shave that wool off the legs. I'm going to go back into my PowerPoint here and kind of show you. Let me. This is kind of a little bit fluffier than I'd like. I'd like to see them trimmed up a little bit better there. But you get the idea is we're not shaving that wool off. We're just fluffing it up. Same with the goats. We fluff their legs up. We don't shear them off. And so if you are clipping your goats, we want to clip from the knee up all the way across the head and from the hock up all the way across. We shear them off. Same with sheep, from the hock up all the way across the head, and from the knee up. We shear. We don't touch the legs with the clippers. We just use wool cards and hand shears to trim them. Okay, let's get on to our hogs. So hogs are a little bit harder to demonstrate in the show ring with just pictures, but you can see how these kids are showing. This young lady is really intense in how she shows. You don't need to hunch over like that. You can see this young man's a little more natural in his stance, but they are not using wooden canes or rods. They're using these really fine whips, as we call them. They're hardly visible in the pictures, you can see, but they're directing their hogs with those whips, and that's what makes it really nice. They're not making big red blotches on those animals. Those whips are just very, very barely visible. And what's really important with our hogs is that when we're driving them across the show ring, we keep those heads up. You can use that whip when you're training them. You just kind of tap underneath their snout, underneath that jowl, and it'll train them to keep that head up when they're walking. You can see that how these two hogs, when they're walking with their heads up or driving with their heads up, how long it makes those backs look and how tight and clean fronted it makes them. So we really want to make sure that we drive those hogs across the show ring with their heads up. And some of the fitting things, we're getting away from the really slick shearing our hogs, the cutting the hair completely off. I prefer to have about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of hair on there. If they're longer than that, you tend to trim them about 2 weeks before the fair, even 3 weeks before, and that'll make sure that they're not too closely clipped. And if they get any razor burns or sores, it tends to clear up. We don't want to see red burn marks on our hogs at the fair. And something else that's really important to think about, let me share this full screen now that I'm looking at it. Come on. Do we have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I do have one question. What if your pig gets a sunburn, like a week before the fair?
A week before the fair. Ooh. The best is to not let it get a sunburn right before the fair.
Okay.
If he does, just try to keep him cool and try to make sure that if he's sunburnt, we want to keep water on him. We want to keep their skin hydrated. So you're going to want to put in some sort of lotion or oil on them. Not necessarily an oil. You don't want that to cause any more sunburn, to keep their hides supple and not cracking.
Okay, thank you.
If they currently have a sunburn, then it's best to start working them now and making sure that they have shelter from the hot sun, and make sure you keep them cool. This is not gonna let me.
We
Okay, thank you.
have a shelter. We have a shelter for our pigs, and we have other pigs that are too fat for the fair, and we are wondering if those other two are gonna be fine to be just butchered.
Your ones that are too fat?
Yeah, the ones that are too fat. He's meaning our extras. No, not the extras. We have 2 pigs that are really fat. It's okay. And we're planning on butchering the extras. So it's okay. Never mind.
Yeah, if you're just feeding them out, just get them ready to butcher and you'll be fine. We don't want them to be really scrawny. You can see these hogs in these pictures I have. These are really, really nice hogs. You can see that they're not really wasty in their jowls. Their jowls right here underneath the chin.
Yeah.
And they've got a clean belly, but they're not, you can't see their ribs. They've got a nice fat finish to them. Can you see that definition?
Yeah.
That fat cover?
Yeah.
These hogs are ready to be butchered. These are good hogs ready to go.
Okay.
In these 2 pictures, you can see it's okay to touch your hog with your hand in certain occasions. It looks like this young man was trying to get his hog to move again, so he's tapping the back. If your hog lays down, you can slap the back, but we don't want to kick them. We don't want to whip them hard. We want to make sure that they're used to driving around. It's really important, if you are getting ready for your show and you're starting to work them, to know when your show typically is. If your hog show is first thing in the morning, then you should be working your hogs in the morning so they're used to that. If your hog show is at noon, I hope it's not at noon, I'm pretty sure it's not, that's when you should be working your animals. So if the sheep show's at noon, you need to be working those animals around that time so they're used to that heat and they're used to working that time of day. If you only ever work them at early in the morning or late at night, your animals aren't going to be wanting to work for you in the show ring at a different time of day that they're used to.
Okay.
You can see again with these hogs, you can see how this young lady's using her whip underneath that hog's chin to bring his chin up. And hogs are really curious. If you're using these whips with a little bit of a tassel on the end, you can circle that tassel in front of your hog's nose and train him to follow that tassel around. Don't let him eat it, but he'll follow it. So if you haven't trained your hogs to walk, I recommend getting one of these whips with a little tassel on the end, and you can train him to follow it because they're curious. And then you just have to tap their chins to get them to walk up. And you've got to start working them now. Start working them and tapping their necks to get them to walk with them up now, so they'll do it in the show ring for you.
Okay.
And then with hogs, we really want to make sure that with hogs are the only animal that you want to go around behind their rump or their hams. We want to make sure that we're not trying to pass in front of the nose. So we try to go around behind. It's not always possible because sometimes your hogs turn really fast and you can't get around. But we want to make sure we do that. And when we're showing in the show ring with hogs, it's important to be no farther away than 12 feet from the judge and no closer than 5 feet. We want to make sure that we're showing the best views of that hog. So this hog here on the left-hand side of this slideshow, he looks really good from that angle. This breed of hog, the Hampshire hog, tends to be a little pigeon-toed in front. They tend to toe in. So it's important to know what your hog looks like. If your hog's kind of narrow from the front, you don't want to always be showing me that front end of the hog. We want to make sure that you're showing me the best views of your hog at all times. This young lady on the right, her hog's really wide and powerful and straight through the front end. So she's doing a good service to her hog, showing that to the judge by walking that hog straight on towards the judge, so that judge can see how wide and how impressive that hog is from the front end. So we want to make sure that we're walking our hogs towards the judge, away from the judge, and side to side to give that judge all angles of your hog. If your hog's not real great from the front end, don't walk him directly towards me. Walk him more at an angle, so I'm never seeing directly straight on if that hog's not great in his front legs. If he's not great from directly behind him, make sure you walk him away from me at an angle. Kind of same thing if you're not real impressed with his side, they're gonna look longer walking away or kind of at an angle away from me than they will directly forwards, directly back, and directly side to side.
Okay.
So again, with this one, you can see this young man, he's kind of walking at an angle. And this young lady, this hog, is really impressive from that view. So she's going to make sure that that judge is seeing that side profile as much as possible. And now with hogs, we want to make sure that we're training them that they're not running around the show ring. We don't want to be chasing our hogs around. Like I said, we want them to be between 5 and 12 feet of your judge. I don't want them in a corner. And this is where practice comes in. All species, if you get the chance to take your animal into the show ring before the show, like the night before, they're going to be a lot more relaxed in the show ring the next day. They'll be used to it, and they're not going to be as curious, especially your hogs. They're not going to be as keen on running into a corner and laying down. They're going to know what the show ring is and be more willing to behave for you. So with hogs, use a whip, as we call it. There's some that just have like a little flat 2-inch leather part on the end. You can use those. We want to make sure too that when we are working these hogs, we are only hitting them from the blade forward. So the blade is the shoulder, if you don't know that. Blade forward and from the knee and the hock down. Why don't we want to hit them anywhere else? I hope you should know this. That's because your prime cuts of meat go across the top of the back and down through the ham, and your sides is your bacon. If you're slapping that hog and making red welts and bruising, it damages the prime cuts of meat. So we don't want to be hitting our hogs anywhere where those big cuts of meat are. From the blade forward, shoulder forward, hock, this back joint is the hock, and knee down is where you should be using your whip on your hog. Make sure you know what your hog looks best. If he looks really great from the side, then you're going to want to be doing a lot of side to side to show him off to the judge. And it's really important if you are in the ring with your hogs to see if there's a lot of kids driving their hogs towards the judge, take the free space and go side to side. instead of driving your hog towards me. If everyone's going side to side, try driving your hog towards me. Get that hog out of the group and show me that you know the best aspects of your hog and that you know the best ways to show it off. That's where showmanship comes into hogs. There's a lot of kids that are just like, oh, I can just chase my hog around the show ring. No, that's not true, because you can have a really good hog, and if he's in the corner laying in the dirt the whole time, I'm not going to see him as a judge, and I tend to just look over him. You want to make sure that you show me your hog at all times, and that's where this 5 to 12 feet from the judge and really keeping track of your show ring to see where the other exhibitors are, to make sure you're not crowding, and try not to run your judge over. Judges don't like to be bit by hogs, and we really don't like to ride hogs across the show ring, which has happened before. So let's make sure we don't do that. Okay. I've got a video now for you guys to watch. Let me get that into the link. Do you guys have any questions? Any questions on hogs?
Excuse me?
Yes.
Can your hog ever be too wide?
Yes, but it's not necessarily common. We're trying to get away from the really short, squatty hogs that are really massive, that are super wide. If your hog's already, I mean, you've already bought your hog.
Potbelly pigs? Like potbelly
what?
pigs?
Like
potbelly pigs?
Yes, we don't want them short and wide anymore. We were trying to get them to have some more length to them. We're trying to get them a little taller. And honestly, how many of you guys have eaten pork chops? They're not very big. We don't want our pork chops the size of a steak. We won't eat it. It's just not what we want. So we don't want our hogs to be that wide and that massive. That's not what the consumer wants. That's not what we want. Let me get this video going for you. Any other questions? You are welcome. Okay, 1 second. Screen share. And I hope you can hear it. Like I said, if you can't hear these videos, please watch them at home for your species. You're going to learn a lot from these videos. There's a ton of information. You can watch them multiple times and pick up new things every time you watch them. Sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to see if I can get my microphone. All right, I hope you understood what he was saying. He brought up some really good points on questions that, I mean, any kind of questions, fair game. He's talking about what do you do? How do you groom your pig? Oh my goodness, that was my bad. Sorry. And that's with all species. There's some basic questions that you should know is what breed is your animal? What is the average weight? We just talked about that. But another good question and a good market question, you guys are showing market animals. What's the average ribeye area or loin-eye area of your animal? Questions like that. If you have any questions, let me know. I'll give you a couple minutes. We've still got some time. So is there any questions on what you just watched or any other species or show attire, anything, just let me know. And I'm going to show, there's just a few things that for me, since I am your judge, that I have a few pet peeves that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of. I'm really big on my eye contact. I want to make sure I see your eyes. I mean, don't stare me down, but you need to catch my eye every once in a while. The 3-second rule's my thing. If you have a hard time looking at the judge for very long periods of time, then take 3 steps, then look at the judge. Either way, 3 seconds. You should be looking around, looking at your judge. You should be clean, professional in your appearance. I don't want to see gum in your mouths. I don't want to see a hat ring. I don't want to see hats on. I don't want to see hay in your hair or dirt behind your ears. You should have clean teeth, clean glasses. Just make sure you look very professional in the way you look. That first impression is the most important. And then spacing, we talked about this with all the species. We want to make sure we have enough space between you and the animals in front of you and side to side. Make sure you're not running the judge over. Make sure you're being courteous to the other exhibitors in the ring. If I tell you to line up, please have straight lines. Makes judging go a lot faster if you can line up straight and I'm not having to fix my lines and try to look around other animals. And then we want to make sure our lambs and goats are braced unless I'm in front of that shoulder. And we don't want to go around the rumps of your lambs or past the goat behind your back. Make sure that you are doing that. So these are just some personal preferences. Make sure that you do these or don't do these for your show. Any questions?
Do you have a personal preference for like a hairstyle for girls, like, or anything like that?
You know, I don't care about the hair. I do think that you should have your hair pulled out of your face so that they're not having to constantly pull their bangs out or pull their hair off their neck. If it's going to be hot, try to get it up off your neck so that you don't get overheated in the show ring. I always showed with my hair pulled back in a ponytail or at least my bangs pulled back so that it wasn't hanging in my face. The least amount of distractions you can get in the show ring, the better.
Excuse me?
Yes.
I don't. Sorry, she forgot what she was gonna say.
Oh, all good. So let's make sure with your show attire, if you're wearing brown boots, you should have a brown belt. If you're wearing black boots, you should have a black belt. And make sure that your jeans don't have holes in them. I really think a dark wash jean looks a lot nicer and a button down long sleeve shirt looks the nicest. If it's really hot, you can get away with a 3/4 sleeve or even a short sleeve, but the button up shirt just polishes the attire and makes it look a lot nicer. In some of those videos, you can see where those kids are just wearing t-shirts or just polos and it just isn't as sharp, doesn't look as nice.
Do you like so with the pants, do you have a preference on style? Like, do you like the wide leg pants or what do you kind of like?
As long as it goes over the top of the boots, doesn't matter to me. They can be boot cut, they can be flare leg. I just don't want to see skinny jeans tucked inside your boots.
Thank you.
And we don't want to see muck boots. You know, your irrigation boots going on. I have a few kids that I've judged their shows multiple times and he comes into the show ring every time with those muck boots on. Can't get him to change his mind. It's not professional. We want to look professional. If you only have an old pair of cowboy boots, a little bit of polish is cheap and it goes a long way. It can really make your boots look nice for a few dollars.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Does it matter what color of pig you're showing?
Nope. Just know what species it is or what breed it is. Do you know that answer? Do you know what breed your hog is? These are all good questions to find out. Before the show, you've got a whole month. So just basic questions for each species that I'm likely to ask is, what species or what breed is your animal? How much did it weigh? What are you feeding it? What are some market breeds? Basic questions like that are things that I typically ask in my shows. If you're very knowledgeable, I might start asking some more industry related questions that are a little harder, like what is your average loin eye area? What is your average ribeye area? What's the average dressing weight? Things like that can be good questions, but they're also a little more complicated. So your basic questions are what things you should know if you're showing your species. Any other questions? Well, that's all I have. So if you guys are all done, I appreciate you tuning in and for the questions and the participation. Try to go back through and watch these. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys in about a month.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Natalie. We appreciate your presentation, and we
Bye.
recommend you guys going and looking at the videos that are the species that you'll be showing. And Brandy's recorded this, so if you want to watch it again, she'll share a link and you'll be able to watch it again. With that, we thank you, Natalie, and look forward to seeing